Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're really opening up the history books, looking at a figure whose name, even now, like 5 centuries later, still basically screams scandal. Lucrezia Borgia.
It really does. Just say the name and, yeah, images pop into your head. Incest, poisonings, the whole decadent scene of Renaissance Rome.
Exactly. But here's the thing, and this is sort of the core of our deep dive today.
Yeah.
How much of that image, the Lucrezia we think we know, is, well, actual history? And how much is maybe the result of, I don't know, the most effective, most sensational political smear campaign ever? Maybe in Western history.
That's a million-decade question, isn't it?
Right. So our mission here is to wade through the sources we have, the letters, the court records, all that political gossip that was flying around, and really try to untangle the threads.
Yeah, to separate the real woman, who was clearly intelligent and used, frankly, as a political tool.
Ruthlessly used.
Absolutely. To separate her from this dark, almost gothic legend that her enemies, well, they really needed people to believe it.
Okay, so to get Lucrezia, we first need to understand the world she was dropped into. Picture Rome, 1492, an explosive year. The Spanish Borgias are making their move big time.
Yeah, 1492. I mean, everyone knows Columbus, but in Italy, especially Rome, it's all about Rodrigo Borgia becoming Pope Alexander VI. And let's be clear, he didn't get there through piety.
No, how blatant was it?
Oh, incredibly blatant. The sources talk about simony buying the office just openly, gold changing hands, powerful families getting promises for future favors, bishoprics, you name it. It was transactional.
So he buys his way onto St. Peter's throne.
Pretty much. And the established Italian nobility families like the Orsini, the Colonna, the Sforzas, they were furious. They saw him not as, Christ's representative on earth, but as a foreigner, a Spanish wolf in shepherd's robes, as one source puts it.
A Spanish wolf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And his number one job from day one wasn't spiritual leadership. It was cementing power. Not just for him, but crucially for his illegitimate children.
So you're saying ruling Rome then wasn't about saving souls, it was just pure, raw survival politics?
It was survival at knife point, honestly. Alexander was an outsider, universally distrusted by the Italian aristocrats who thought the papacy was their birthright.
Makes sense.
And that paranoia, totally justified. The sources paint a picture where every banquet could hide a plot. Every alliance was purely temporary based on who offered the most right now. He had to be ruthless because, everyone was smiling to his face and sharpening knives behind his back.
And this is the world Lucrezia is born into. How does that shape her value, her role?
It defines it completely. The core idea driving every decision her father makes about her is this. In this high-stakes game, this chess game of souls and crowns, daughters aren't really children. They're assets.
Strategic assets.
Sophisticated strategic weapons. Use them to make alliances, use them to break alliances. They're disposable when the strategy changes.
Disposable. That's harsh. And Lucrezia herself, even as a young teenager, is described as stunningly beautiful, almost angelic.
Yes. The sources harp on that immediately. Creature of golden hair, moving like sunlight through stained glass. Very poetic descriptions. But it wasn't just looks. She was smart. Really smart.
Okay.
Her tutors apparently raved about her quick mind, her artistic talent. She spoke multiple languages, Spanish, Italian, Latin, maybe even some Greek. Wrote poetry, loved the arts.
So beauty and brains.
Exactly. And crucially, in Renaissance thinking, that combination in a woman was seen as, well, dangerous. Potentially very dangerous. Both beauty and intelligence could be weapons. And in the hands of the Borgias, they could destabilize everything.
And speaking of dangerous Borgias, the main player in her life, the one who really embodied that ruthless ambition, was her brother, Cesar.
Ah, Cesar, yes. He was the engine of the family's ambition. Brilliant strategist, totally ruthless, and laser-focused on his father's dream, carving out a Borgia kingdom in central Italy.
Didn't he start out as a cardinal?
He did. Spent years in cardinal's robes, but everyone knew his real passion was military conquest, building an empire. It wasn't cut out for the church life, not really.
And he's the inspiration for Machiavelli's The Prince, right?
Famously, yes. He's seen as the perfect model, a ruler who got it, who understood that morality, well, that's a luxury, something only the weak can afford when power is on the line. Cesar was all about pragmatism, whatever it takes.
And the sources hint that the bond between Cesar and Lucrezia might have been intense, more than just brother and sister.
They do. Some contemporary accounts mention her gazing at him with a unnatural devotion, as enemies would later frame it. This is really where those incest rumors start to bubble up, even before her first marriage.
So was it just deep sibling loyalty in a hostile world or admiration for his power
Yeah.
or something else?
Exactly. That's the ambiguity. Was it just a complex bond between these two, sort of isolated by their family's crazy ambition? Or was it, as their enemies jumped on, something darker? At this early stage, Lucrezia is just this fascinating puzzle wrapped in the finest silks.
A puzzle that was very quickly put to political work. Let's jump to 1493, her first marriage. A transaction, really, to Giovanni Sforza.
Giovanni Sforza, yeah. He was 26, nephew of the Duke of Milan, a big deal. Marrying the Pope's daughter. That looked like a golden ticket for the Sforza's family, cementing their influence right there in Rome.
And for Pope Alexander.
For Alexander, it was a strategic necessity. At that moment, he needed Milan's support. He was worried about the King of Naples, and also the French king was making noises about invading Italy. So the Sforzas were useful allies. For now.
For now. And Lucrezia in all this, she was, what, 13?
Barely 13. Yet the descriptions are quite stark, standing beside Sforza, like a doll positioned for display. The wedding itself was pure spectacle gold, jewels, massive feasts, all designed to show off the Borgia wealth and power.
But underneath the glitter.
Underneath, it was cold calculation. Lucrezia was the human seal on a temporary deal, and apparently the marriage itself was rocky from the get-go.
How so?
Well, Giovanni expected this young, manageable bride who'd just, represent the Milanese alliance quietly. Instead, the sources suggest he found a girl who, even at that age, was navigating Vatican politics with a surprising fluid grace. She was already learning from Dad and Big Brother, it seems.
Okay, so that marriage lasts about 4 years, which, as you said, in Renaissance Italy politics is practically an eternity. Why did Alexander suddenly decide Sforza had to go?
Because the political chessboard shifted dramatically. The bigger prize emerged. France. The French king, Charles VIII, was actually threatening to invade and claim Naples. Alexander realized he couldn't stop him, but maybe he could manage him, align with him.
Ah, so suddenly the Milan connection, the Sforzas who were tied up with Naples, they become a problem.
Exactly. They went from asset to liability overnight. Alexander needed to pivot fast to a pro-French stance, and that meant Giovanni Sforza and Lucrezia's marriage to him had to be nullified, erased.
Which brings us to the annulment in 1497, and this required some creative justification from the Pope.
Oh, incredibly creative. And arguably blasphemous. To make Lucrezia marriageable again, Alexander had to ensure she was presented as still virginal, untouched. So, he declared Giovanni Sforza impotent, said he couldn't consummate the marriage.
But wait, wasn't that easily disproven?
It should have been. That's the crucial bit. Giovanni had been married before, and his first wife died in childbirth. Pretty clear proof of functionality.
Right.
But the sources kind of shrug and say, hey, who's going to publicly challenge the Pope, God's representative on earth, even when he's telling such an obvious political lie? The power dynamic was just too skewed.
So Alexander tries to just erase Sforza with this papal decree, but Sforza doesn't go quietly, does he? He fights back.
He fights back with the dirtiest weapon available. He knew he couldn't win a military fight against the Pope, but he could attack their moral authority. And he knew exactly where the weak spot was.
Incest.
Incest. He goes before the courts of Italy, basically, and announces that the marriage wasn't consummated because Lucrezia was already sleeping with her father, Pope Alexander, and her brother sister.
Wow. I mean, the impact of that.
It was like dropping a match in a powder keg. It hit Renaissance society like a thunderbolt. Remember, Alexander was already hated by many Italian powers as this Spanish outsider.
So this gave them the moral high ground they needed.
Precisely. It was propaganda gold for anyone who wanted to resist Borgia rule. It attacked the very legitimacy of the papacy. If the Pope himself is involved in this kind of depravity, how can he claim any spiritual authority?
And Sforza's claims had credibility because he'd lived in the Vatican.
Yes, that was key. He'd been there for 4 years, shared meals, attended private audiences, seen things behind closed doors, so his accusations felt like precise strikes, not just wild slander. He was seen as an insider, revealing the rotten core.
So every normal family interaction, a laugh, a hand kiss, a private chat between Lucrezia and her father or brother.
Instantly twisted, reinterpreted by gossip mongers across Europe as proof of this pornographic theater, as one source calls it. Every gesture became suspect.
And Lucrezia's reaction to these potentially life-destroying accusations.
That's another fascinating layer. The sources note she never issued hysterical denials. She didn't perform the outrage you might expect from someone falsely accused of something so vile.
What did she do?
She apparently chose to just smile enigmatically and change the subject.
Which could mean anything.
Exactly. Was it the cool composure of someone who knew the accusations were lies and refusing to engage dignifies them? Or, and this is the interpretation her enemies loved, was it the quiet confidence of someone hiding a dangerous truth?
That ambiguity just fuels the legend, doesn't it?
It ensures its survival. The not knowing is almost more potent than certainty would be.
Okay, so if incest wasn't enough to blacken the Borgia name, the next accusation wasn't far behind. Poison. Lucrezia becomes the infamous poisoner, the golden-haired angel of death.
Yeah, the poison angle attached itself to her almost immediately. It was just too irresistible a narrative for the time. The legend paints her with this hollow ring, the anello della morte, filled with some kind of super toxin.
Enough to drop a bull elephant, apparently.
Right. And she'd just casually twist it, sprinkle a little death into someone's wine cup, like she was adding sugar to dessert. It's a chilling image.
And Renaissance Europe was kind of obsessed with poison anyway, wasn't it?
Completely obsessed. Politically, it was the weapon of choice for the elite. Why? Because it was subtle, untraceable, often. It let the physically weak overcome the strong. It let the killer maintain total public innocence while their enemy conveniently died of a sudden fever or stomach ailment.
And there was a gendered aspect to this too, poison as feminine warfare.
Very much so. It fit the stereotype. It required subtlety, not brute force. Intimacy, not open confrontation. The idea that a woman could slip poison to a man while literally sharing his bed.
Making love and death dance together.
That exact phrase captures the fear. It tapped into deep-seated anxieties about female deception and hidden power. So, any mysterious death near the Borgias, popular imagination just loved pinning it on Lucrezia.
And let's be honest, there were a lot of convenient deaths surrounding the Borgias.
A staggering number, yeah. Alexander's political opponents just seemed to disappear or die suddenly.
Well,
You mentioned her brother, Juan Borgia, found floating in the Khyber, stabbed.
right.
But even that Claire murder got a poison twist in the rumors. People whispered that the assassins only finished him off after Lucrezia's poison had already weakened him. No proof, just whispers.
And all those cardinals who opposed Alexander.
Dropping like flies. Officially, it was always fever or some natural cause. But the pattern. One source says the mathematics of mortality around the Borgia family defied natural explanation. It really suggests systematic elimination.
Probably orchestrated by Caesar.
Most likely Caesar was the muscle, the one ordering the hits. But the quiet, sneaky method, poison.
It felt like Lucrezia's domain to the public, much more gothic and intriguing.
Why did that narrative stick so firmly, even without direct proof she ever personally poisoned anyone?
Because from a slanderer's point of view, poison is the perfect accusation. It requires zero concrete proof. You can't dig up a body 500 years later and run tests for some obscure Renaissance toxin. Right.
The suspicion was enough. The whisper, the rumor that Lucrezia might be poisoning people that achieved the political goal, making the Borgias feared and morally condemned, doubt was as good as proof.
Okay, so Lucrezia is now divorced, smeared with rumors of incest and poison. Alexander still needs her politically. Time for marriage number 2. Enter Alfonso of Aragon in 1498.
Alfonso of Aragon, young, handsome, only 17, and crucially, heir to the throne of Naples, a very desirable connection at that moment.
Did he know what he was getting into?
Probably not entirely. The sources suggest he looked at Lucrezia with genuine affection, maybe saw her as someone to be rescued. But Lucrezia looked back with eyes that had, as one historian put it, already seen too much, known too many secrets. She wasn't naive anymore.
Their marriage sounds doomed from the start, like roses in a cemetery.
That's a great description from one of the texts, yeah. Beautiful on the surface, maybe even genuine affection between them, but utterly surrounded by the political death and decay of the Borgia court. Alfonso wanted to save her, perhaps, but saving her meant challenging the Borgia machine. Bad idea.
And just like with Sforza, Alfonso's political connections, his link to Naples eventually became a liability, didn't they?
They did. Politics shifted again. Alexander and Caesar needed French support more than ever for their military campaigns in central Italy. France was determined to conquer Naples.
So Alfonso, the Neapolitan heir living in the Vatican,
became a massive political embarrassment, an obstacle, a reminder of an alliance that was no longer useful. As the sources say, love and politics made toxic bedfellows in the papal palace. You couldn't have both.
And when a Borgia ally becomes an obstacle, well, we know how this goes. July 1500. Caesar makes his move.
His agents strike first, swords flashing on the steps of St. Peter's. Alfonso is wounded, bleeding, but he survives the initial attack.
He makes it back to his rooms in the Vatican.
Yes, recovers there, surrounded by his own guards, and significantly, his wife Lucrezia is tending to him. He probably felt safe, thinking, okay, I'm inside the Pope's palace, my wife is here, I survived.
But safety was an illusion.
A complete illusion. The papal master of ceremonies, Johann Burchard, recorded the grim finale in his diary. Strangers, wearing papal livery, the Pope's own colors, entered Alfonso's chambers, and they strangled him, right there in his bed.
Brutal and clean. An execution, not a brawl.
Exactly. This wasn't random violence. It was calculated, carried out inside the heart of power. And suspicion naturally fell heavily on the Borgias.
Especially Lucrezia. The timing was just too perfect. Alfonso's death removes the obstacle to the French alliance.
It absolutely did. It cleared the path perfectly. So the big historical debate flares up again. What was Lucrezia's role? Did she actively help? Maybe drug his wine so the assassins could get in?
Or did she just look the other way?
That's the other interpretation. Did she simply turn away and let love die for family loyalty? Did she understand that her own survival, her family's power, depended on Alfonso being gone, and she just let it happen?
Her reaction afterwards seems to fit that complexity.
It does. Publicly, she grieved. Sources mention genuine tears at the funeral. But privately, she accepted condolences with this practiced grace. Like someone who tragically understood that dead husbands were just part of the job description when you're a Borgia princess. Public grief, private resignation.
Okay, this brings us to a truly infamous year, 1501. The Borgias are at the height of their power, but this is also the year of the scandals that really cemented their reputation for, well, utter decadence. Let's start with the mysterious baby.
Ah, yes, Giovanni Borgia, the so-called infans Romanus, the Roman infant, arrived in 1501, a riddle wrapped in swaddling clothes, as one source beautifully puts it. Lucrezia had a child, but she wasn't married at that exact moment. Politically, this was a nightmare.
How did they handle it?
With staggering audacity. To give the child legitimacy, property rights, status, without officially tying him to the unmarried Lucrezia, Pope Alexander VI issued 2 contradictory papal bulls about his paternity.
Wait, two? 2 official papal documents contradicting each other?
Yes. It's mind-boggling. This wasn't just rumor control. This was the Pope using the highest form of official decree to deliberately obscure the truth. Papal bulls. Solemn, authoritative documents.
Okay, so what did the bulls say?
The first bull named Cesare Borgia as the father, claiming the child resulted from an affair Cesare had with some unnamed unmarried woman. Okay. Scandalous, but perhaps manageable.
And the second?
The second bull, issued almost at the same time, named Pope Alexander VI himself as the father, claiming he had the affair.
He named himself. Why on earth provide 2 conflicting lies?
It was classic Borgia misdirection. Muddy the water so completely that the actual truth becomes irrelevant. The child, Giovanni, was officially legitimized, made a duke, given lands and titles. That was the practical goal.
And by offering 2 scandalous options,
they kind of neutralized the most damaging possibilities, like the persistent incest rumors involving Lucrezia, or maybe paternity, by a lover named Brothel who had conveniently died. The official record was now a confusing mess, but the boy was secure.
Then Lucrezia herself?
She publicly referred to Giovanni only as her half-brother, acknowledging neither papal bull directly. The boy grew up in the court, apparently resembling both Alexander and Caesar, enough to make either story plausible, but also, tellingly, having Lucrezia's distinctive golden hair. A living question mark.
A living question mark. Wow. Okay, if the mystery baby showed their willingness to manipulate truth, the next event showed their willingness to just trash the sanctity of the Vatican entirely. The Banquet of Chestnuts, October 31st, 1501, Halloween.
Yeah, this one is infamous for a reason. And we know about it in lurid detail, thanks again to Johann Burchard, the papal master of ceremonies. He wasn't trying to slander them. He was just keeping his diary, recording court events with almost clinical detachment.
And what did he record?
He recorded that Cesare Borgia invited about 50 prominent courtesans, prostitutes, to his private apartments within the Vatican on All Hallows Eve, under his father, Pope Alexander's roof.
Okay.
Wine flowed freely, there was dancing, and then, well, clothes started coming off. Burchard describes naked courtesans performing and dancing for the assembled guests, including Pope Alexander VI watching from his seat, and Caesar, who seems to have orchestrated the whole thing.
It gets worse, doesn't it? The chestnuts part.
It does. He describes candelabras being placed on the floor and chestnuts scattered among them. The entertainment then involved the naked women crawling on their hands and knees between the burning candles to pick up the chestnuts using only their mouths.
Oh my God.
And the men, including clergy, apparently offered prizes, silk tunics, expensive shoes, jewelry for the women who collected the most chestnuts, or perhaps for other enthusiastic sexual performances throughout the evening.
So the Vatican, the heart of Western Christendom, is turned into, the sources say, a combination brothel and gladiatorial arena.
That's the phrase used. And it seems grimly accurate based on Burchard's account. It's just jaw-dropping stuff.
And the final nail in Lucrezia's reputational coffin, her alleged role in this. What does Burchard say?
Burchard's diary entry suggests she was present. And not just present, but allegedly participated in judging the contests, awarding the prizes, and laughing along with her father and brother. Like someone, as he puts it, born to such entertainment.
But again, the question of agency comes up, right? Was she a willing participant, or was she a young woman trapped in her father's court, essentially forced to be there and put on a brave face?
That is the crucial, unanswerable question. Given the power dynamics, could she have refused to attend if her father or Caesar demanded her presence? Probably not. Was she genuinely amused or just playing a role?
We don't know.
We don't know for sure. But Burchard's account, taken at face value, paints her as complicit. And the wider context suggests that maybe events like this, if not always quite so extreme, were becoming disturbingly routine under Borgia rule.
And the political fallout must have been immediate.
Devastating. News of the Banquet of Chestnuts spread like wildfire to every court in Europe within months. It seemed to confirm every suspicion, every dark rumor about the Borgias' depravity. It was catastrophic for their image.
After that year, 1501, Alexander must have been desperate to get Lucrezia out of Rome and into a more stable, respectable situation, which leads to marriage number 3.
Yes, the final transaction. Marriage to Alfonso d'Este, who would soon become the Duke of Ferrara. This happened in December of 1501, right after the banquet scandal.
And this negotiation sounds like they were trying to sell damaged goods at a premium.
Pretty much. Lucrezia's reputation was so toxic by this point that Alfonso d'Este's family, the Este dynasty, demanded an absolutely enormous dowry. We're talking 100,000 ducats.
How much is that in real terms?
Enough gold to fund armies, build palaces. Was an astronomical sum. Essentially, the price Ferrara demanded to take on the Pope's scandal-ridden daughter. The cost of association had gone way up.
And Lucrezia's feelings about husband number 3?
Sources suggest she was reluctant, maybe even fearful. There's a story, possibly apocryphal, that she told her father her previous husbands had been very unlucky.
Which was putting it mildly, considering one was forcibly divorced and declared impotent, and the other was murdered.
Exactly. You can understand her apprehension. She was barely 21 and already a two-time widow, effectively.
And the wedding arrangements involved more Borgia-style manipulation of truth.
Of course. The biggest sticking point was Lucrezia's son, Rodrigo, the child from her marriage to the murdered Alfonso of Aragon. He was living proof she wasn't a virgin. So Alexander simply paid physicians to issue official certificates declaring Lucrezia still a virgin.
Yeah.
Despite the toddler running around the Vatican,
they pay them off.
The implication is clear. Papal gold, maybe some papal threats, ensured the required medical testimony. Political necessity required a virgin bride, so a virgin bride was manufactured, reality notwithstanding.
And leaving her son, Rodrigo, behind in Rome. That must have been hard. But it was used against her, too, wasn't it? As proof of her being an unnatural mother.
Yes, her enemies jumped on that. But you have to see it through the lens of her reality. She wept bitterly when leaving Rome, the sources say. But she had no choice. Papal daughters did what they were told.
She couldn't bring the son of a murdered Neapolitan prince into a new marriage alliance potentially hostile to Naples.
It was politically impossible. Staying in Rome meant staying in the toxic spotlight. Going to Ferrara offered a chance at a different life, maybe even survival. But the price was leaving her child. It was a sacrifice demanded by politics, not a lack of maternal feeling.
So she arrives in Ferrara. What was life like there? Was it different from Rome?
Very different initially. Ferrara, under the Este family, was a major center of Renaissance culture and learning. It valued stability, the arts, scholarship. It wasn't the chaotic, knife-edge political environment of the Borgia papacy.
So a chance for her to use her intelligence and education in a more positive way.
Absolutely. She finally had an outlet for her intellectual gifts, her appreciation for poetry and music. She became a significant patron of the arts in Ferrara.
But the scandals didn't just vanish, did they? The rumors followed her, especially rumors of affairs.
No, they followed her. Within months of arriving in Ferrara, whispers started. Two main figures come up. The famous poet Pietro Bembo and her own brother-in-law, Francesco Gonzaga, the Marquis of Mantua.
Pietro Bembo. That relationship sounds intense.
He does. Bembo was the literary superstar of Renaissance Italy. Their surviving letters suggest a really deep emotional connection, maybe intellectual, maybe more. He wrote about her intelligence and wit with admiration rarely shown by men towards women then. He saw her as an equal.
Were they lovers?
The letters are coded, flirtatious, full of riddles. They dance around anything explicit. It could have been a passionate, potentially dangerous, but ultimately platonic, courtly love. Or it could have been a full-blown affair conducted with great discretion. The Ferrara court specialized in that kind of ambiguity.
And the alleged affair with her brother-in-law, Francesco Gonzaga, that sounds politically explosive.
Extremely risky. Gonzaga was a major military leader married to Alfonso d'Este's sister, Isabella. An affair between Lucrezia and Gonzaga could have shattered the crucial alliance between Ferrara and Mantua with huge political consequences.
So why risk it? Or were these just more rumors?
Again, it's hard to say definitively. Were they genuine affairs? Or were they close, courtly friendships that enemies deliberately misinterpreted to keep the Borgia scandal machine churning, even from afar?
It seems like powerful men were just drawn to her, almost as a challenge or a trophy.
That seems very likely. Her combination of beauty, intelligence, and that lingering, dangerous Borgia connection made her an irresistible figure. Conquering Lucrezia Borgia, even rumored conquest, was a status symbol.
But despite all the lingering rumors, her life in Ferrara did eventually settle down, didn't it? She had a large family with Alfonso d'Este.
She did. She had 8 children with Alfonso, though not all survived infancy. She really did seem to find a measure of domestic stability and satisfaction there. Her later years are characterized by this cultural patronage, a growing religious devotion, and what looks like genuine contentment.
So she transitioned from Pope's daughter, political pawn, scandal magnate, to respected duchess.
Largely, yes. She built a reputation in Ferrara for piety, charity, and supporting the arts, a far cry from the image forged in Rome.
But that Roman image never fully faded.
It never did. Those quiet decades in Ferrara couldn't completely erase the sensational stories from her youth. She'd been tried and convicted in the court of public opinion years earlier, and that verdict stuck. Every good deed was still viewed by some through that old lens of incest and poison.
Even her death seemed to fuel the narrative.
Right. She died relatively young, only 39 in 1519, due to complications after childbirth. And even then, you had people muttering about divine justice finally catching up or delayed punishment. The legend simply refused to die with her.
Okay, let's try to pull this all together. We've gone through the major allegations: incest, poison, the banquet. Looking back with historical perspective, what's the verdict? How much is likely slander? How much might be true?
It's definitely a mixed bag, landing squarely in shades of gray. Let's take incest first. The evidence strongly points towards political slander.
Started by Giovanni Sforza for revenge.
Exactly. It was tactical. It gave Italian powers the perfect moral excuse to oppose the Spanish Borgias. There's no concrete proof it ever happened. Normal Renaissance family affection, which could be quite demonstrative, was easily twisted by enemies. But can we say with 100% certainty it didn't happen? No. That sliver of doubt remains.
Okay, what about poison?
Poison is trickier. The pattern of deaths around Alexander VI is undeniable. Too many rivals and obstacles died too conveniently for it to be coincidence. Systematic elimination seems highly likely.
But was Lucrezia holding the poison ring?
That's where it becomes speculative. Her direct involvement relies heavily on those gendered stereotypes, poison as the woman's weapon. It's far more likely Sivar's agents were doing the dirty work, probably with blades or strangulation, but the poison story was just more lurid, more fitting for the mysterious Pope's daughter. So, Borgia poisoning almost certainly happened. Lucrezia personally doing it. Very little evidence.
And the moral degradation, specifically the banquet of chestnuts, Burchard recorded it.
The event itself. Yes, Burchard's account is generally accepted as factual. He was there. The real question is Lucrezia's role. Was she the laughing, prize-giving judge the account implies?
Or just forced to be there.
Or forced to be there, playing along out of fear or necessity, given her lack of real agency in that court? Was it enthusiastic participation or reluctant compliance? The truth is probably somewhere in between, and impossible to know for sure. Burchard recorded what he saw, but not necessarily her inner state.
So why, after 500 years, does the scandalous version, the evil Lucrezia, still dominate the popular imagination? Why did it stick so well?
A couple of key myth makers really helped cement it centuries later. First, you have Alexandre Dumas, the novelist, writing in the 19th century.
The Three Musketeers guy.
That's him. He wrote about the Borgias and basically presented Lucrezia as this inherently unfaithful demonic figure, mistress to her father and brother. He wasn't working from new evidence, he was drawing on the old Renaissance gossip. But because he was such a famous writer, his version became incredibly influential.
He gave the gossip literary credibility.
Precisely. And then you have someone like Lord Byron, the Romantic poet. He visited Milan in 1816, saw a lock of Lucrezia's hair, read her letters to Bembo, and became completely obsessed.
Obsessed how?
He kind of romanticized her. He stole strands of her hair. He wrote about her passion, transforming the moral scandal into this tragic romantic tale. So you have Dumas painting her as a villain, Byron painting her as a tragic romantic figure, both reinforcing the legend over the more complex historical reality. Popular culture loves a good story, either pure evil or tragic romance, more than messy ambiguity.
So summing up, Lucrezia Borgia wasn't the saintly victim some revisionists might want, nor the demonic monster of legend. She was something in between, a product of her time.
Exactly that. She was clearly a highly intelligent woman thrust into impossible circumstances. She survived by learning the brutal political game she was forced into, using whatever tools she had, compliance when necessary, manipulation when possible, and a kind of strategic moral flexibility.
You had to be flexible to survive that court.
You really did. Judging her by our 21st century standards of individual choice and morality kind of misses the point. She was first and foremost a political commodity, traded for power and alliances. Her story sticks with us, I think, because she embodies these timeless archetypal fears about dangerous female power, about corruption within families, about what happens when raw ambition overrides any sense of conscience.
Her life really is a stark example of how political necessity back then could justify almost anything, actions that seem utterly reprehensible to us now.
It truly is. And we're left not with neat answers about her guilt or innocence, but with this complicated reflection of her time, and maybe even our own assumptions.
Assumptions about women, power, family, and the incredibly high price survival can sometimes demand.
Right. So the final thought to leave you with is this. When we look back at figures like Lucrezia, caught in these historical webs, these different moral universes, can we ever really judge them objectively? Or are we always looking through the lens of our own time, our own values? Can we separate the history from our own moral framework?
Something to think about. A fascinating dive into a very complex life and legend. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.